e oli, aloha, o ike ya oto. Aloha mai o kalani ke ike o lani hap o mai o kalani ke alani ua mamau. Mahalo e te aku i na loto kalani umai mai au na lani o na ua o Hawaii e o aki o la maulu au na ke i o Hawaii mahalo iau na lani nui a mamau mahalo Aloha mai, ya tatou a pau. Greetings to all, Waiola Church, and to our prestigious guest, Mr. Ilinani Onalani, as you know, again, for Dr. Ronald. My name is Tama Kalereiki, and we belong to a committee of our church, and our mission is to give preservation and recognition, all the good words to those who have really worked hard for Hawaii, for her people, all people. And it has to do with a reverence. I know he did take a little break, but Hawaii, once you're a kahu, you're a kahu. And that's William Richards, we call Papa Akua, Papa Kahu. There's not many other kahu or even I would say missionaries that I would speak highly of. For they're very select. And he is one of the prestigious ones in Hawaii, along with Reverend Lion Ellis, William Ellis, many good human beings who happen to be reverend. And we have our kahu, our first kahu, buried on this ground. And we had gone through our works, and I had met our wonderful friend, brother, Ron, and he came to us in bringing care to some of the graves that have been dilapidated by time. And it was Reverend William that we really wanted to shine on his work from since he was born in 1790 something. And here he is laying with our ali'i along with Maka'aina. He was also the privilege to be laying in state with King Kamehameha II and his wife, his sister wife, Queen Kamehamalu in Ho'okaina, after they were removed from this aina, which they stayed for 7 years. And his plight in the work of Christianity, helping us, he was a marvelous, he's still a marvelous man. The work he did for Hawaii. It's just, he was an unsung hero. He just worked in the back, put in the weeds, let everyone else go be busy, as he helped shape Hawaii, the churches, the people. It's so incredible. I mean, he died without, with a penny.
that's how important this work was, and it still is. And I hope we can bring light to this marvelous human being. We call him Papa. Papa Kalama. Our wonderful Kahu Williams. And after the grad with Lakia'i, we have our lady in waiting here. She has just been ongoing in bringing us information with Kahu and helping us understand the walk of a grant, especially the advocate grant. And we had called upon this wonderful person, Ronald, which has helped us shape and where we're going with our project. It should be a project for Hawaii or a project of Maui. And thank you for bringing that to me. So we give applaud and aloha to our Hililani Konalani or Ronald.
Aloha mai kākou. Aloha. I malahini wau ki ia wahi o Waiola. Ka moku o Lāhaina, ka moku puni o Māui, ko Hawaiʻi pai ai. O laila, e hoʻomaka wau I kuʻu o oku au hau. So, I'm malahini to this place of Waiola, in the moku of Lāhaina, in the Mokapuni, in the island of Maui, in the Hawaiian. Right? So I'm a visitor. So I was always trained to start with your mobile phone, to let folks know where you're coming from to this story. So I'll do that. My mother is Janet Marie Lavalki. She is from Chicago, Illinois, where I was born. Her people come back from Montreal. Before that, from Paris, from Wales, and from London. So a little bit of French, a little bit of Welsh, and a little bit of English in me from her side. My father is Ronald Williams Sr., Big Ron. He's from Arkansas, where I grew up. He comes from a long line of farmers, fishermen, hunters, and so forth, living off the land. Literally today, still lives in a trailer up near the lake and hunts and fishes for a living. That's Ron Williams Sr. I grew up in Arkansas. I came out to California in 13, 14 years old. Came to Maui in 1996. I was blessed when I first arrived here. I knew I was visiting someone else's home, and I wanted to learn something about the place. But I was blessed to meet my first kumu right away, and that was a koni akana. I'll tell you a funny story, kind of self-deprecating story. I was working at a Pacifico restaurant, and I was there for a few weeks, and I kept seeing this guy, short, porky guy, red hair, out chanting near the water. I'm like, oh, that guy out chanting. Come to find out, he knew what he was talking about. He was kumu for that area. He was the man bringing back friends of local kumu. So he became my first kumu and taught me a little bit of language, a little bit of history, but more importantly, a different way of thinking, a different way of learning. That kind of got the fire started, and I was working at the luau, the filming on the luau also next door, the Fisa Lele. I was a waiter there when it first opened. And I had my daughter, my beautiful daughter, Yele Makana. And she was 4 or 5 years old, and I knew I couldn't work there forever. I could live up eventually. So I went back to school at Maui Community College. Keopi Rain was my first academic kumu here in Hawaii. And he was brilliant also, passionate also. Keopi taught me Hawaiian studies, taught me Hawaiian language. And one day in class showed a film in class that changed my life. And that was a film of the most brilliant person I've ever seen, or heard in my entire life. Passionate, fierce, and interesting. And that was Dr. Hamani K. Trask. I decided right then and there I wanted to learn from her. I didn't know any better that I couldn't or that I shouldn't. So But I went to Kamakakuakalani in 2003 and was welcomed with open arms. Hana Hine, who was the counselor there, pulled me aside on a tour of the campus and said, if you come here to Kamakaku, this is your home too. And so I was welcomed by not only Mehana, but Dr. Osorio, Dr. Kahima, most importantly to me, Dr. Trask. We grew into a relationship with her that was like a mother. She got me through college, literally and figuratively. When I came back to Maui, I went through a divorce and was a single father, and I came back to Maui after my bachelor's degree. And Kelly and I were living here. I got my job back at Luau and struggling, ended up, for a while, staying at somebody's house with my daughter and so forth. And Kumu Trask called us up and said, "You're coming back to school, grad school." I said, "No, Kumu, I don't have any resources. I don't have any money. I got my daughter. I cannot." She said, "No, that wasn't the question. You're coming back to grad school. So come here, get here." And so I flew over to Oahu, and she had set up my enrollment for my daughter at Kulakaikuli Hanoi Pololo. She had gotten me a tuition waiver for that semester, and she continued to do that for the next 4 semesters. So, and I tell that story because there are public narratives about folks like her that are quite different than that narrative of her taking a Steve County farmer boy from Arkansas and getting into college. So I owe where I am today to folks like that, to Kumu Konikana, to Kumu Kiope, and to Kumu Trask, among others. So I got my bachelor's degree in Hawaii studies in 2005. I got my master's degree in Pacific Island studies in 2008. And I got my PhD in Hawaiian history in 2013. So that jaunt back to college at 32 years old turned into a 12-year stint of being a full-time student. My specialty is working with Hawaiian language resources and accessing Hawaiian voice to platform that voice. And so in that process, I met Tom about a decade ago, maybe, at the Hawaiian Mission Houses Museum. I was doing research there, and he was also. And something happened that day, and we became part of each other's lives. Since then, our work has combined together to support each other's works. My name that I've gotten from my name came from him, and about 2 years ago, the society that I was president of, Hawaiian Historical Society, honored him as living legend, recognized the work that he's done for many years. So I mahalo him as part of my path also. Sometimes I hope everyone remembers what they have. So, speaking to that, tonight we're going to talk about Reverend William Richards. This project has been really interesting for me, and also has come to be one of my favorite projects. And that's because somebody asked me a while back, how do you choose what you do? Because I've written academic articles, I've written public history articles, I'm finishing up my book and so forth. I'm always working on 70 projects, but the ones that end up finishing, the ones that end up being published, are things that I have no choice, right? You don't choose the topic comes to you, it tells you, I want to be heard, and you do that work. That's happened with Reverend Richards, and because he, for me, is kind of an encompassing of what I do. That is hopefully build bridges. I was a professor, not a professor, I'm a faculty member at the Center for Hawaiian Studies at Kamakaku, which is known for its panaho. And yet I was working at Bishop Museum. When I told the folks at Bishop Museum that I taught over there, they said, "Oh my God, they hired you?" I said, "Yeah." And vice versa. But through that, bringing my students to them and them to the students and so forth, we ended up creating a combination where now the classes go to the museum and the museum comes to the classes and so forth. So hopefully that's the type of work that I'm able to do. Reverend William Richards was that to a T, right? He was a missionary. You all heard stories about missionaries. For those of you who know what I worked on my dissertation was the story of Hawaiians claiming Christianity, making it their own, and becoming native Christian patriots, what I call them. And that is Christians who were full-on Christian and also full-on patriots to their nation, loyal to their queen. So that work interested me, that crossing those boundaries. But we still have those narratives of the missionaries, right? And these folks. We're coming up on the 200th anniversary of the arrival of missionaries. The Hawaiian Mission Children's Society is doing a large program. I'm going to be part of that program doing the history of Hawaii Church. So we'll That's going to be one of the part of those projects. But in working with Reverend Richards, I came to understand how he's the perfect example for us, those people trying to build bridges. Because he was a devout missionary. He was a devout Christian. He was one of those first who came to the second coming of missionaries to Hawaii. And yet, he sets aside that work for a calling to serve the nation. Right? My colleagues and many people that I work with have spent the last 5 or 10 years, including myself, platforming Kanaka Oiwi, Native Hawaiians, in the incredible work they did to build a nation. And I want to pause there and kind of expand on that for a second and talk about that. Coming out of the Hawaiian Renaissance, there was a specific narrative that was, admittedly, reactionary, because it always is. When you've been oppressed, when you've been colonized, when you've done this thing, the pushback kind of swings the pendulum maybe that side too far. So there was, and a lot of research hadn't been done yet, so it was this narrative of the binaries. Brown good, white bad, native good, foreigner bad, and so forth. Understandably, that's what came out of that 100 years of suppression. But that story has started to be complicated by proudly Native Hawaiians. Kanaka scholars like Kamana Beamer, Don DePreza, Willie Kauai, and non-Kanaka scholars like myself have been doing this work saying, wait a minute, look. In the 1830s, when Kauai became Mo'i, or was in the middle of his reign as Mo'i as king, the story we had that I was taught in college was that Hawaiian society was living in its way, and then the Haole came, imposed a Western form of government on the kingdom, and that was the end of the story. Then this kingdom was lost. Right? And that system was bad. Well, once we started to go back and look at the primary source documents from the Mo'i and from the elite, what we find is a whole different story. What we find is a story of agency, of Hawaiians being intelligent and part of their history, and deciding for themselves to make certain choices for good reason. There was a book written in Pacific history called Fatal Impact. I forget the name of the author right now. But it basically said, yes, the history of the Pacific is white man going throughout the Pacific, landing on islands, and natives falling by the wayside. That's not what happened. Here in Hawaii, when Kauai again was Mo'i in the 1830s, the European powers started to gobble up countries in the Pacific. The Marquesas was taken by the Spanish. The French were eyeing what became French Polynesia. The Germans were looking at Samoa. Hawaii was in the center of the Pacific, middle of the Pacific between the United States and Asia. It would have been next. There's no question, by the 1850s, Hawaii would have been taken over by a country and colonized. No question at all. There's no navy, there's no military force, there's no way to stop it. So in the 1830s, Kauai knows this. There's interaction going on. There's lots of different foreign people here. Did you know that in the 1850s, I found a chart the other day in the archives of official currencies. There were 140 different currencies traded in Hawaii. I didn't know there were 140 currencies, period. The Danish raskar, the Russian this and that, the Argentinian this, all these different currencies. This was a cosmopolitan place. There were people coming and going. So, Kauai knows that he has to do something to save the independence of his country, and hopefully the people on the land. And so, he says, the only shot he has is to build a country that they'll respect. Right? And so he begins this project of creating a Western-style government that the other countries might respect. And not only respect, but formally recognize. Now, it's a 1,000,000-to-1 shot, because how are you going to do it? And if you do it, why would they recognize this tiny little place in the Pacific when they don't have to? So, but it's the only shot he's got. So at that point, he starts this project to create a Western-style government. And understand this also, as a historian, I can tell you one of my areas, especially world history, I don't know of another instance in the world when the absolute divine monarch, he was divine. He was thought of as God. If he wanted something, it was his. If you want to talk about ownership, whatever he wanted was his. Yet he voluntarily gives up 2/3 of that power, creating executive, judicial, and legislative branch of government. Not under duress, not because the people rose up with pitchforks and said you have to. He did it voluntarily because he knew it would save the nation. That's a progressive modern choice, right? So Kawiko decides to do this project. There aren't lawyers here. There aren't land agents here. There aren't international diplomacy. There isn't international diplomacy here yet in the 1820s and 30s. So he looks for help. And he turns to his most trusted advisor that knows some of these things, and that's the Reverend William Richards. So Richard becomes, for him, the beginning of this building of sovereignty for Hawaii. So when my colleagues and I talk about Timoteo Ha'alilio as a Hawaiʻi as a patriot, and Joseph Navahi is one of the great patriots of the nation, I would argue that Reverend William Richards is a patriot of the Hawaiian nation. Yeah. And that story links the work of those different groups of people. It's a very powerful story. So let's talk a little bit about that. So, hey, Moho level know William Richards, a story of William Richards, faithful servant of God and nation, as part of a grant project to restore and revitalize the final resting site of this Waiola patriot, lover of the nation. So, when Richards arrives, he gets here from New England, and he's here only about a month and a half. He must have been, there's culture shock and there's getting used to things and so forth, and he's here just a short period of time when Keo Puolani says, I want you to teach me literacy. And I want you to teach my children literacy. And I want you to teach me about this new religion. And not only that, she decides to come home to Maui. She's a Maui girl. She's from the other side. But she comes back, she's tired of Honolulu, too much going on there. So she comes back to Maui. They take a ship and she says, you're coming with me. She brings Reverend Richards along with her. Now she has a kahu that she, as her personal kahu, a man named Tawa, a Tahishu, who speaks kind of, she could understand better. So he comes, Richards comes, Reverend Stewart comes, and they come over to Lāhaina, Maui. And they set up the first Christian church on Maui. But they have the first mass, the first service of a mass, I guess. I'm sorry, not but church service on the beach, right down where the library is. Then they have a couple more services up there. They build a temporary little hallway, kind of church thingy, over where the ballroom house is. And then you're going to come to see this site built as a third building, a third church of Waiola Church. I'll show you that in just a second. Now, about 7 years ago, or 8 years ago, I was working at the Hawaiian Historical Society. David Forbes, some of you might have heard that name. David Forbes is a prolific bibliographer of Hawaii. He wrote the Hawaiian National Bibliography. It's a 4-volume set about that wide. He's one of those people that goes into the archives at 9 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week, and leaves at 5. That's what he does for his life. And he documents documents. So the bibliography is things published about Hawaii. The original church record book for Waiola Church wasn't in there. And he's writing about 99% of the time. So I didn't give up, but I figured that book's gone. Now we know the fire, the church burned down in a fire in 1894, so it probably got destroyed in the fire. That's my thinking. So in the middle of my dissertation, I'm working through that, working through everything else, going through things. My Hanai at Maui, Malakino Willard, had taught me early on, every research trip you do, you start with a prayer. Now again, I'm not Christian, but I start with a respectful prayer and ask for help. It's the right time, it's the right place, it's Michael Yana to receive these people. One day, at Hawaiian Mission Houses Museum, I'm the president of the Historical Society, so I'm allowed to kind of go back and play in the document inspector. So I'm doing that, and I come across this book on the shelf. And this book is the Lāhaina Maui Church Record Book, 1823 to 1872. It's the original church record book for Lāhaina Church. And I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't exist. It had been accessioned into the collection in 1917, and then for some reason deaccessioned and thought lost, but it had been placed on a shelf and moved around. David had looked for it, he couldn't figure out to take that. But it was there sitting on the shelf that day. And so I pulled this down. He was there that day, he was here kids. But this is the original church record book, and I ended up finding out through the newspapers in 1917, Lineker, who was the territorial archivist for Hawaii, found the book in the Lahaina courthouse basement. So for some reason, it was taken over there at a certain point, survived the fire. He brought it to Honolulu. So, we have the original church records book. If we look at it, first page is Records of the Church at Lāhaina, Maui, from its commencement in 1823. Some of it is in English, most of it is in Hawaiian. This is the first page. Records of the Lāhaina Church. On the 31st of May, 1823, the following members of the Sandwich Islands Church took up residence in Lāhaina, where by administering ordinances, communing together, exercising discipline, etc., they to a certain extent constituted a separate church. And the first 7 members of the church at Lāhaina were Charles Stewart, Harriet Stewart, his wife, William Richards, his wife Clarissa, Betsy Stockton, the African-American slave, former slave, William Kamahoma, and Kawa, the Tahitian priest. So these folks were the first 7 members of the church, right? And they had that church service. Now, Theo Polani wasn't a member yet, right? She wasn't baptized, but she will. So the book goes on for 70-something pages. It's a beautiful book of different baptisms. There's the problems, the difficulties that not being in a Hawaiian church, and so forth. All of that is marked out. That was part of my dissertation, so I believe it's part of the collection at the Library of the Church. Okay, so William Richards quickly becomes the organization person for this mission station out in Lāhaina. Charles Stewart is doing that for a while also. But Richards becomes kind of the focal point. And he becomes the kind of quartermaster, I don't know what the word that they used was, of the collective system they had. Really brilliant, kind of interesting system of sharing goods that the missionaries had. Whenever anybody got anything, if I'm a missionary here in Maui, and my mom sends me 16 pounds of flour, that goes to everybody. Almost a socialist system of sharing. Whenever they got anything, when everything came up, it was written down in a book. It was divided and shared out and so forth. So those stories of taking vows of poverty were very real. They were here to share the gospel, to share the Holy Spirit, not to get rich, not to become part of government and so forth. Those are specifically orders of that first mission. Now, any of you who know me and know the work I do, know I'm not a defender of the missionaries, but I'm a historian. So we're going to talk about the truth. Now, the sons and the grandsons of the mission, to a great degree, changed that mission to be a political mission. But these folks that were here, including Reverend Richards, came with that intent to bring the gospel of Christ. So he does. He becomes the kind of quartermaster of the mission. There's a page, and he was a prolific journal person, taking journals, writing journals. We have at the Hawaii State Archives, the Richards manuscript collection. We have his journals, we have letters, we have different things, all these different documents from him. And he wrote prolifically, and he did a lot of things. This is one of the pages of hundreds of the things that came in. July 21st, some kapa, some guavas, pa'iai, the hard boy, right? And he's keeping track of everything that's coming in, and they're divvying it out. So he was kind of that person. He was also very interested in weather. He takes the weather every 2 hours at different stations around, one on Maui, when he's in Honolulu, he does it there, and so he's an amateur weather person also. Now in 1832, they decide that they want to build the early church was very much about the people following the elite. So when Theo Polani says it's church this Sunday, you come. And so there were literally thousands of Kanakaʻiwi coming to church in Lāhaina on Sunday. So we need a church. So this church, this first church here in Lāhaina, first stone church here in Maui, is built on the property over there. It's built to house, they said there were 2 services on Sundays. Both of them had about 2,500 to 3,000 people in attendance. Wow. That's a lot of folks coming to church in Lāhaina. The building was talked about by Samuel Kamakau, the native Hawaiian historian in the 1860s, wrote about it in Kanukipa Popoa. He talks about what an incredible achievement it was. He talks about how it was built, the open windows it had, this wonderful building. The land and the labor was donated by Ho'opili, who lived right over here, right? So he says, Dr. Ho'opili says, I want you to build a church. It's going to be right over here, and I'm donating the land. So they build the church, and he names the church at that point Ebenezer, right? The Bible story of the rock of Ebenezer. He names the church Ebenezer. Now, the names of the church are interesting. That first church that they kind of halfway held in different spots, there's no official name for it that I've ever seen. They called it the Church at Lāhaina. At this point, it becomes Ebenezer, or in Hawaiian, Ebenezer. Then it becomes a place called Waiola Church, and then as we know, in 1951, it became Waiola Church. So, Reverend Richards is the kahu, or kahuna pule of this church. Really interesting language question that I haven't answered yet. I've always used the term kahu. If you search the Hawaiian newspapers, sometime in that period they use the term kahu, and sometimes they use the term kahuna pule. And my first guess was it was a more formal term, but I'm not so sure. There might have been a distinction between kahuna pule and kahu. But so he's the kahuna pule of this church in Lāhaina. So you can kind of, in human terms, you can understand the kuleana, the responsibility he had being pastor to 6,000 folks and more. The kuleana, the responsibility he had to take care of that flock of sheep, to take care of the community. So, while the most sacred woman in Hawaii is watching over your children the whole time. There was a difficult time around the death of Keopuolani, 1826. Questions about whether or not to baptize her. She was baptized just before her death. She puts her children in the care of Reverend Richards, Waiola, and Nahiana. Most of you probably know Nahiana struggled with that decision and that being pulled between two ways. Her brother, Waiola, and some of the chiefs really insisted that there was a traditional answer. I should back up. The biggest issue in Maui and in Hawaii in general in the 1830s was death and disease. Nothing else matters if you're all dying, and they were. They were dying in the tens of thousands. We know there was close to a 90% population loss in about 70 years. So something's wrong, right? Traditionally, to Native Hawaiians, if there's something going on like that, then the gods aren't pleased. You have to please them. The way you answer that problem, or create a deity that can answer that problem, is a ni aupiohu, ancestral sheep. So Nahiana is supposed to be with her brother Limo, but he goes to London and dies. So now she's supposed to be with Waiola. And in my novel, I can understand that push, because for them, having come with a belief that lasted 3 or 4 or 5, 6,000 years, right, throughout Polynesia and then into Hawaii and so forth. And then this answer that you've been given, which is believe in Jehovah and you'll be fine, isn't working. They're still dying. So for them, we got to try the traditional way too. So they start this glorification of this new deity that will come, this new akua that will come. And that causes difficulty for Reverend Richards. There's a pa'u, a feather skirt made for Nahiana. Women were tabooed from the feathers. They didn't wear the feathers. It was not allowed. Yet this was a problem that pushed beyond those boundaries. And so they start a feather cape, which is just historically one of the most amazing pieces of art and projects I've ever seen in the world. And that is the pa'u Nahiana, which was 20 feet long by 2.5 feet wide. A feather skirt, pa'u. The owl bird, the black bird with yellow feathers under its wing and tail, was the main feather for that cloak. That cloak is held by Mission Museum today, and they've estimated approximately 1 million oval feathers. Each bird had about 8 to 12 yellow feathers. That's well over 100,000 birds for that one pa'u. And that project was started by the people behind it. This was the capital. This was where the mana was. So they started a project. Now, to be clear, they didn't go out and gather that many birds all at once. There were lots of storehouses of feathers. They would store feathers, gather them up, and so forth. So they might have had a head start. But this national project begins to gather feathers around Hawaii for this pa'u to save the people. And so they build this pa'u. Hannah is given the pa'u. She's told by Reverend Richards, come to church on Sunday, stop hanging out with your brother in Honolulu. She's chastised, and it's in the church record book. She's chastised for drinking rum. She's actually, and I don't make judgments on this. I think of this as interesting as a historian. Think about this. Hannah is, to some Hawaiians, a living deity. And yet she walks into church and she's told to leave church by Reverend Richards. So that must have been interesting for the congregation. That power play, right? So she leaves church, she comes back and repents. She eventually goes and is with her brother in Honolulu. We know this because there were lots of reports from different ship captains and so forth, but also how Hawaiʻi, wanting to create this new deity, this new god that is so powerful, it will answer this problem of death and disease, sends out a crier around Honolulu saying, oh, by the way, Hannah and Hawaiʻi are sleeping together right now, because he wants, for when the baby comes in 9 months, for people to know it's his. Because she was married at the time, right? She was married about 4 years prior. So, Hannah is in the midst of this and ends up being excommunicated by Reverend from the church. So it's a difficult time. It's a difficult time for the church. It's a difficult time for Hawaiʻi. It's a difficult time for Reverend Richards. Hannah has a child in September 1836. The child dies a couple of hours after birth. She dies 3 months later on December 30th, 1836. Her brother is grief-stricken, takes her body back to his house at Waiola in Honolulu. Won't part with her. The newspapers write in and say, when is he going to bury her? When is he going to bury her? And he refuses. He has a funeral for her on February 4th at Waiola Church, and then takes her back to his house. Finally, in April, so she's passed for 4 months now, in April, he buys a ship, a Spanish ship called the Quixote, and christens it the Harieta Hannah, and sails it to Maui to bury her with her mother. So he comes here, and Sango Kamakau, a project that I wanted to do for many years, and I will before I die, hopefully, is map out this funeral procession. Because it's written in Hawaiian newspaper. It's just they use place names that I don't know anymore. They're small place names around beaches and up to behind. But the ship lands at Mala Wharf. They lay out Lāhaina mats. First they lay down with ili, those little pebble-worn stones. They lay out ili, put Lāhaina mats on top of them. They get to the Redford Grove, which started about a quarter of a mile back this way. They cut the path out of the Redford Grove down this way, and they lead to Mo'u. And that's a funeral procession of Hannah to her mother's gravesite. Yes.
Can I just add something
Sure.
to that? I had the opportunity to do the genealogy of Little Key Street. Fascinated by the fact that this was a common verbiage that they cut a path with breadfruit trees. So my question was, who planted this grove of breadfruit trees, which went all the way back to Waiola now? And so there we start to see the first Hawaiian almost in some ways. And so it's considered back in the day to be considered an act of war to cut a ulu tree, because the ulu tree was planted for each child that was born, because that was a gift from the gods to say that we will take care of you for the rest of your life, and we will perpetuate our family with your family. So in order to listen to how the queen really asked them to change their way of grieving, they cut a path with the breadfruit tree, which was a silent and a heartfelt path. Yeah.
So they bring her body here, they bury her with her mother. Eventually, they both make their way over to Mo'u and then to Waiola Church. So Reverend Richards at this point has seen this happen, has kind of, the church, even though it had 6,000 people coming, they weren't all members. The church membership at the time was around 700 to 800. Those are the folks that are baptized and members of the actual congregation. Reverend Richards continues to do this, as I mentioned, around 1936 or 37. He starts to be talked to by Hawaiʻi about this project that he's working on. They're talking about more and more people coming. They're talking about different government machinations around the world. And Reverend Richards in 1838 resigned from the ABCFM mission to assist Hawaiʻi in building constitutional monarchy in Hawaii. Now, this didn't go over well with the mission back home. And there are, if you read through the materials, there are no egotistical or personal gains from him to do this. I don't see any other answer than he did it because he thought it was the right thing to do, to serve the people of Hawaii. Right? This envisioning of the British taking India, of the Dutch taking Africa, all of these colonization projects that had happened before, not those before and would come after, I think we're pretty clear. The world was coming to Hawaii. And I think Reverend Richards, as a human being, saw that happening and thought, I might be able to make it. So he resigns from the mission, takes up his work with Hawaiʻi. Hawaiʻi asks him to go to the United States and bring back people versed in international law and courts and things like that, and building governments. He goes to the United States. He's not able to talk folks into coming here, so he decides, well, then I battle her. And he starts an intensive education of himself in constitutional law, in the building of constitutions, and so forth. He gets every book he can. He orders different books. He has Hawaiʻi to order books, and he basically does an intensive study of these types of processes. And he's helped along later by other folks that will come. Folks like William Little Lee. William Little Lee came with Charles Reed Bishop. They were headed out to Oregon to make a fortune in the health business up there. They land here. William Little Lee had legal training. And so William Little Lee and Richards talk. Hawaiʻi talks to them. Lee decided, okay, I'll stay in Hawaii and help. So William Little Lee and Reverend Richards become two of the primary writers of that first constitution for Hawaii. Right? So, we have this process building. We have 1838, the retirement. I just want to throw this in there because it was the same time period. This is one of his weather reports taken at the King's Grass House in Honolulu. Yep, out in 9 a.m., noon, 2 p.m., sunset. I mean, he really kept track of the weather, kept track of these records. Was that kind of A-type personality. So they, in 1839, create a Declaration of Rights of Man, which is a precursor to the Constitution. So William Richards, William Little Lee, Hawaiʻi, John Hawaiʻi, Mateo Ha'alilio, and others get together and say, how are we going to do this? Now, I should back up just a moment and say, laws were already passed here in Hawaii. Not after where we are, literally a few hundred yards from where we're sitting. Lāhaina was where the first Constitution was written. It's also where the first aha, where laws were proclaimed, came out, in the 1820s. In 1829, Ka'ahumanu calls an aha kuhina, a council of chiefs here in Lāhaina, and they passed the first 5 written laws. Now, there had been edicts about ships coming in and so forth. These are the first written laws in Hawaii. And interestingly, we have those records, we have those literal original ones that they wrote in the state archives. And the first version was 6 laws. And so I'm reading them and I'm saying, okay, no theft, no murder. They got rid of ho'okamakama, which is prostitution, drinking rum, and there's different laws. And the 6th one was moikolohe, which is adultery. Now, at that time, in 1826, it's almost a universal practice among Hawaiʻi, right? This idea of marriage is kind of an odd one. Moiaku moimai. Any procreation was a good procreation. It was creating life. So those 6 laws became 5 and left out moikolohe. So my guess is that they wrote that one and said, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to fly.
That's not good.
So they ended up with 5. Prostitution was one of those. Now, moikolohe will be outlawed about 6 years later. So those are the first laws that were written. They were written here near Lāhaina. That declaration comes in 1839, and it's fascinating. It's very liberal. All men, not women, sorry, not that liberal, yet all men are born the same under God's eye, have the same rights, and so forth. Now, again, if you think for a moment that Waiola would have done that if he didn't think it was the right thing to do, you think anybody could have tricked him into doing that? Of course not. He was raised as an absolute divine monarch. Yeah. He saw this as the right thing to do. If you look at, I was arguing with somebody the other day about the chiefs oppressing the Kanaka. That's been a long narrative. Well, chiefs oppressed the country. People don't understand the heaven. They misinterpret the heaven. Well, chiefs took on land. Chiefs suppressed the Lāhaina. Oh, really? Because in 1852, there was a lawsuit in Lāhaina, Maui, of the people suing Prince Alexander Legal because he was blocking access to the church. Because it was his property, but they had a traditional path that ran through his property when this street rained out. So they took that path. So he took offense. And they sued him. And they won. So I said, if you think the Mo'i couldn't say, Mo'i was restricted by the law. That's my point. This switch to the power of law, and the power of all men being equal, not saying pure democracy. It begins here in Hawaiian 1839. So 1840 comes. We have the first constitution in Hawaii, Ke Kumu or 1840. An interesting historiographic side note, it's written in Māui, Hawaii. It's written in Hawaiian, discussed in Hawaiian, and passed in Hawaiian. That Hawaiian constitution of 1840 is printed, Lāhaina Seminary. It goes out. A year and a half later, late 1841, they translated it into English. And that English version comes out. Every scholar I've ever seen talk about the 1840 Constitution cites the English one. It wasn't even the original. It was a year and a half prior. There are translation issues. So when we're talking about the 1840 Constitution, understand we're talking about the one in Māui. There was an English version that came out. 1840, the first Constitution comes out, shifts things out. I don't want to give the false impression that we had three separate branches of government. Hawaiʻi was the Mo'i, he was in charge of the executive branch, but he was also a member of the judiciary and a member of the legislature. He didn't run them, so we did have a dilution of power. There wasn't pure democracy. There wasn't three separate places fully yet. But we do have a Kohina Nui, co-regent, who's a female, right? Kapuana was the first, so forth. And so we have this lessening of Hawaiʻi's power with the 1840 Constitution that he signed, and that the Kohina Nui signed. So now we've got a constitution. We've got executive, legislative, judicial. We've got elections for the first time in Hawaii. And for many Kanakaʻiwi, it was difficult because it's not our kuleana to elect the leaders. We don't get to say who leads us. It took a while to understand that change. The first votes ever in Hawaii came from a petition. What you did was you gathered up people in your area. This one came from Kohala. And they would gather up and say, the 15 of us want to see him as our legislator. They send it into Honolulu. Whoever had the most petition names got these elected. That's how the first election happened. So we start to have these elections. We start to have the appointment of the House of Nobles, an election of the legislature, right, in 1840. So now you've got that taken care of. Now you need to kind of see if it worked, see if other countries respect it. So there's more and more pressure coming. The French have come here and demanded special treatment. They're angry that the Catholics got kicked out. They fixed that problem. The English have come and demanded special protections. We don't want, if somebody who's English gets arrested for breaking the law, we want them to have an English jury. All these types of things are going on. These threats to Hawaiian sovereignty, Hawaiian right to rule. And so Kaʻiʻi is pushing faster and faster. We've got to do this. He appoints William Richards and Timoteo Ha'alio as the first Hawaiian Kingdom emissary diplomats to the world. And this is the actual document here, the Hawaii State Archives. Letter of Kamehameha III and the Kohina Nui Ke Kapulukohi to William Richards, written at Lāhaina, Island of Maui, 9 July 1832. Right? And they're, what's the wrong date? Yeah, 42. So that doesn't make sense. I wrote the wrong date. The document's 42. So 42. So 1842, William Richards and also Ha'alileo are appointed Hawaiian Kingdom diplomats. He tasks them with the idea of going to the United States, getting the United States to recognize Hawaii as a sovereign and independent nation, then going to Paris and trying there, and London and trying there. It's almost an impossible mission. First of all, remember at that time, traveling across the world wasn't such an easy thing. People tried that and died. Right? Monarchs didn't care. That's why people always call it how was the first monarch to circumnavigate the globe. Monarchs didn't usually do that. They didn't usually get on ships, and they were very, very dangerous. Nonetheless, Ha'alileo and Richard are tasked with doing this. And Ha'alileo says, please don't give me this task. Please don't give me this. It's not something I can do. Kauikili said, no, this is your task to do. And he tells Ha'alileo and Richards, I'm putting the fate of the nation in your hands. After they leave behind Maui. There's some wonderful letters written back and forth between the two. After they leave behind Maui, there's what's called the Paulette Affair. And the British take over Hawaii and occupy Hawaii. There's arguments about land deals, so 1810s, 1820s, 1830s, Ka'ahumanu and other Ha'alii had given land to foreigners. Yes, you've been of service to me. You can have 72 acres in Waiola. It's pretty clear from different readings and so forth that what the Kaku'i meant was you become konahiki about that. You can manage that. It wasn't something like I'm giving it to you and you said, well, now you own it and I don't. Nonetheless, that's what the order literally thought and honestly thought. So there's this discrepancy. And so they start to complain to their foreign counselor in the kingdom. Hey, fix this problem. I got land from Ka'ahumanu, and that's just taking it away from me. And so those court cases come, they're not settled, and so a British warship arrives and says, we're taking over Hawaii to solve the problem. They raise the British flag, they lower the Hawaiian flag, and they say Hawaii is now occupied by the British. This is while Ha'alileo and Richards are at sea. So now the problem has become even more intensified. If you have 2 or 3 days, please come down to State Archives and read their journals, because the journey they took was incredible. They took a ship from Hawaii to the west coast of California, Santa Barbara is where they first put in. Then they made their way down to Mazatlan. And then they literally crossed Mexico by foot, by swimming, by burro, and by everything else. Crossed across Mexico. Look, Richards writes about he swam across this river, disease, thunderstorms. The reason why they went that way, there was no Panama Canal, and they didn't want to go around the Cape because it was supposed to be a secret mission, right? They wanted to quietly make this happen before people protested. Because some countries out there wanted to take Hawaii, but it's supposed to be a secret mission. So they land there, and I'll show you one piece that's in Richards' files. It's brilliant. So this is the Hawaiian Commission to the Secretary of State, Washington, D.C., December 16, 1842, Mateo Ha'alileo and William Richards. This is their commission to Washington. This is, I know you can't see it very well, but I'll point it out to you. This is a hand-drawn map of William Richards from Hawaii, sailing, and he marked the spot every day.
Wow.
Right? And they sail, and they sail, and they sail to land at Santa Barbara. And they sail down here to Mazatlan. And then they cross Mexico. Right? I mean, incredible. Amazing that they made it alive across Mexico. And then they take a ship up to Washington, D.C. Right? So they arrive in Washington, and they go to meet President Tyler. There's a lot of debate about what went, not what went on there, but what it means. Some scholars, and myself, are kind of in a debate right now about the formality of recognition. So they arrive to meet President Tyler, and he basically, in a summary, says to them, yes, I'll respect you as a sovereign and an independent nation. I just don't want to write it down right now. I don't want to put myself out there. having said that, and that's what most scholars have said, but having said that, there are several letters in the state archives. There's also a letter in the Polynesian that President Tyler wrote to Waiola. And it says, now the problem is we don't have the original. We have a hand-drawn transcription that Albert Francis Judd got from his father, Jared Judd, who was part of this whole thing. Jared Judd wrote a transcription of apparently a letter he's looking at. We have that transcription at the Bishop Museum, and we have the wording in the Polynesian newspaper, but we don't have the original letter. The letter from Tyler, it says to Waiola, congratulations on the restoration of your sovereignty after the British left. And the once again, having the rights and claims of an independent and sovereign nation. That's pretty clear. Problem is that formally under international law recognition, right? So, what I'm trying to portray, get across is it was great, but whether or not the U.S. formally recognized Hawaii at that point. So, Richards and Ha'alileo go on. They go to London, England. They arrive in London, and this was a photograph taken of them. This comes from a daguerreotype photograph taken of them in London. Timoteo Ha'alileo and William Richards in London, right? And in London, Ha'alileo is treated with the immense amount of respect. He's a formal diplomat from the Kingdom of Hawaii. He was treated differently in the United States. He was twice, there were newspaper reports from other folks who protested the racism he experienced on ships in the ports in America. But nonetheless, in London, he's treated as a diplomat. He arrives there. An interesting side note is that Richards was somewhat involved in. Waiola gave instructions to Ha'alileo and Richards. Besides trying to gain recognition, I want you to also get us a formal Hawaiian Kingdom seal. Governments have official seals, and you don't just make one up. There's one place in the world that verifies them or ratifies them or so forth. That's the Royal College of Arms in London. And so he says, go get us one of those. And so Ha'alileo goes. Richard doesn't go with him. He's part of that. He's part of the project, but he doesn't go to the actual college. Ha'alileo goes to the actual college, tells them what he wants. And I'm laughing because we recently found the original painting of that from the College of Arms in 1843. And it's the seal as we know it, but it changed 2 or 3 times. Kalakaua changed it, other people changed it. But that original seal in 1843 looks like 2 Irishmen. The 2 twins are standing there, and they've got red hair, and they're white skin. And the pu'o'o, the sticks with the white top on top that mark the kapu place, those have been made into daisies. They've got nice little petals. Because they didn't know, right? So they made this Hawaiian Kingdom seal, and then they bring it home, and Waiola was like, no. So it becomes something else. But that was the first official Hawaiian Kingdom seal with daisies and 2 Irishmen. I'll show it to you hopefully later. Once we see it. But so they get a Hawaiian Kingdom seal. But a bigger story is that August through October, they meet with the representatives of the Queen of England and the Queen of France, and they get agreement to recognition. And on the 28th of November, 1843, they signed the Anglo-French Declaration. Now, Hawaii's not involved. It's a declaration by 2 other countries recognizing Hawaii. Now, you'll see folks call it, and it's all over the internet, called the 1843 Proclamation. That's incorrect. A proclamation is a single monarch, a single nation proclaiming something. When it's more than one, it's called a declaration. So the document is actually called the 1843 Declaration, Anglo-French Declaration. And England and France say Hawaii is a sovereign and independent nation with all the same rights as every other nation in the world, equal. I mean, it just blows me away. This tiny little country in the Middle Pacific was as equal as France and England and Germany and Spain and America and all those other countries at that point. Now, I'll stray from history for a moment just to make that point. By the 1870s, so that means you have consuls and embassies, and you have rights in other countries. By the 1870s, late 1870s, I just finished up an article in my journal history for about this. It'll be out in the next journal. How many councils and embassies do you think the Hawaiian Kingdom had around the world in the 1870s? 136. 136. foreign councils and embassies around the world. In Argentina, in St. Petersburg, Russia, in Pretoria, South Africa, in Detroit, Michigan. There were Hawaiian Kingdom consulates and embassies on 6 of the 7 continents, none in Antarctica. But, now what that means, it wasn't just show off, it wasn't just talk about being fancy. That gave you rights in that country. I'll give it an example. I'm writing myself in this, that's why I'm saying it. I'm trying to finish up a book on a Native Hawaiian sailor in San Francisco who's arrested for murder. Who's on trial in San Francisco during the American Civil War in 1862. California, we always think of as a liberal place in San Francisco, but it wasn't. 1850, California becomes a state, and one of the laws passed by the legislature is that no brown man may testify in court against a white man. And that's on the books in the 1860s. And so, about a week before my Hawaiian sailor's trial, there's a trial of an African American barber. And he's a prominent member of the community, he's a barber. His wife runs a hat shop. A Caucasian man walked into her hat shop, pushed her aside, took her money, and walked out. She's not going to tell him. She wouldn't dare. But she called the police. So he comes back the next day to beat her up, and the husband steps in, and the guy shoots him. Shoots him dead. The African American guy. There were 5 witnesses, but they're all black. They can't testify. There's a Portuguese man, this is a true story. There's a Portuguese man who saw from the street. He says, I'll testify. And the court goes to trial. I found these court cases, I was pursuing my guy, I found the case trial things in San Francisco, the National Archives. They go to trial, and the prosecution calls the Portuguese witness. The defense calls a scientific witness that looks at the Portuguese man's hair under a microscope and says it's kind of curly. He's probably got at least a eighth of African American blood. He's disqualified as a witness. So the guy walks free. So that's the environment where this Hawaiian sailor is charged with murder that he had nothing to do with. And he's going to die. Reverend Gulick is in town. He's working to raise money for his mission in the South Pacific. And he hears about this arrest of Kanaka, so he goes to visit in jail, and he recognizes him. I know that guy. And so he says, I know your father. He says, yeah. He says, yeah, you were in I was murdered, you were over here. Yeah, I was in that place. So they contact the Hawaiian Kingdom Council in San Francisco. And the Hawaiian Kingdom Council contacts the king. And Alexander Liho sends a commission to go defend the guy. And because the Hawaiian Kingdom was a treaty with the United States, they're allowed to send witnesses of any kind. It supersedes state law. And they come as witnesses, and they bring him home. That's the power of those councils and embassies in places across the street. I was reading letters from Port Townsend near Seattle. And the Hawaiian Kingdom counselor in Port Townsend, Seattle, is suing ship captains because they hadn't paid the Kanaka sailors properly. So they're protecting Hawaiian rights around the globe.
Are they staff-connected Hawaiians?
No, not generally. The counselors are usually businessmen from that area that have business ties and know the area and so forth. But you do have to take oath of allegiance to the Hawaiian Kingdom. So, let's get back to it. So, Reverend Richards is part of this mission, right, that becomes the 1843 Anglo-French Declaration. That becomes La Kuakoa, Hawaiian Independence Day, which becomes a national holiday. Now, the national holiday almost disappeared, but was revived about 9 or 10 years ago, and now has today become a very popular holiday that's growing and growing. I'll talk about that in just a minute. We're almost finished. Coming up here. I wanted to show you a few of his letters. There's hundreds of his letters in the travels. He writes a description of the Tower of London. I don't know if it's in this letter. No, but he writes a letter about visiting Notre Dame. Yeah. So the Reverend William Richards writes his impressions of Notre Dame. Right? So he's in London, he's in Paris, he's in these different places traveling. This is a letter about the death of Ha'alileo. So Ha'alileo has gotten sick. Richards is worried. He writes about 12 different letters. He's coughing more today. I've given him medicine, but he's not getting any better. He's worried for his friend. He writes this letter on December 3rd, 1844. This has been one of the most solemn days of my life. I came at 2:30 and resumed my care in the sick room. Ha'alileo Papalios something and left him. And he talks about how he's getting sicker, and he's getting sicker, and he's getting weaker. He passes later that night. Right? So, Richards writes quite eloquently about the loss of this native Hawaiian he'd grown close to. Papaleo is put into a casket. His body is brought back to Hawaii. We have, the ephemera we have around that is super interesting. We have Papaleo's business cards. We use it to travel across to keep that with those types of things. But they arrived back here in Hawaii. Papaleo is buried at the most sacred burial spot, not sacred, but most renowned governmental burial site, and that's Pohukai. The original Mount Hall, the original burial ground for the king at Pohukai, which is on the grounds of Penny's Hill and Palace, right? So Papaleo is buried there at Pohukai. William Richards lives out the rest of his life, passes at 54 years old, I believe. And when he dies, this is something that's funny to me. When he dies, this is his funeral order put out as a broadside. There were 3,000 copies made of this broadside, posted on buildings around town. And this was his funeral. Mr. Rikeke, right? Here's the different people that attended. Honolulu Hale, 8 November 1847. And he's given a state funeral, and the king declares 30 days of state mourning. And every government officer has to wear a black crepe armband for 30 days. That was the respect afforded to Reverend Richards. So for me, and for many of my colleagues, it's a really easy get, right? When we talk to folks who immediately say, "Oh, I understand." Okay, it's not me, The king respected him enough to give him a 30-day state funeral. So, argue with the king. But people, not the media at that time, respected him as a patriot of their nation. Because he was. He helped build the Hawaiian kingdom that gained recognition, that survived for 50 years. In 1893, there's a story, violations of international law, lost the kingdom. So, the kingdom existed as an independent and sovereign state for 50 years because of the work of Richard. So when he dies, he's buried with a state funeral there at Pohukai also. He's buried next to the monarchs at what was at Pohukai. In the 1860s, there's an excavation, and the monarchs are brought up to Mauna Loa, which is built, right? But about 8 to 10 folks are left behind, including Papaleo. About a year and a half after Richards is buried at Pohukai, he's exhumed and brought to Lāhaina to be buried at his family plot here in Lāhaina. So, you know where this plot is out here. The project that Thomas mentioned, and I want to talk about just for about 3 or 4 minutes now, is this grant. This was, I don't know whose specific idea it was, but it came out of the family visiting. I've talked quite a bit with the family. And it was this effort to fix the crumbling grave of Reverend Richards. In doing the research, it's grown. It's become really, really fascinating. There were letters, the oral histories. Tama had told us that he remembers hearing that in the 1930s and 40s they had done something to the grave. We found those documents at the Hawaii State Archives. The president of the Historical Society, the Hawaiian Historical Society, wrote to the manager of Pioneer Mill and said, "Hey, you guys got all that equipment out there, so could you do us a favor? Could you buff up the grave of Reverend Richards? It's falling apart." And the guy writes back, "Sure, we'll do that." And they go out and they do it. Fascinating thing for me. I'm not good with burials and stuff. I have little secrets about that. So it's not that. So it gives me a little. But I'm reading it, and it says that there was a coral mound that was cemented, but beneath the coral mound was a monument. So it appears that there's some sort of depth underneath there, where there is. So I don't know, and we will get there in the investigation and the research, whether come is, let's tell this story. So in doing that, as a historian, you stop immediately and say, wait a minute, where does the kuleana go? Where does the responsibility and the privilege go to do this? And so you say, who are the stakeholders? So the first thing I did was say, who are the stakeholders? And we decided the stakeholders are the family, the Richard Ohana, the missionary society, because he was a member of their society. So how do they bury folks? How do they respect folks in burial? What do they want to see? The people of Lāhaina, right? That's their community. The church, this is in no order. The church, Waiola Church, Nātiaʻia Wainee, right? And Kanaka Hawaiʻi in general. So we set up a plan to go gather mana'o from those groups. That was part of the process for the last 6 to 8 months. We held meetings, we held get-togethers, we held presentations. I went to certain civic groups. Kalei Maile and Li'i in Honolulu had me give a presentation about it. They passed a resolution at their annual convention about the burial. And kind of, there's different mana'o, different sharing of stuff. All of it pretty much coincides in general. One of the strongest themes through all of it is to recognize his service to the nation along with his service to the church, so that folks can see that bridge and so forth. So it's not a done deal yet. All I do is turn in recommendations. But so far, and we're almost done, the recommendations seem to point to there's a marble slab on top of this thing. And so do we keep that exactly as it says? Do we add to the writing? Do we create materials that are educational materials outside of his burial? Do we do something in that area? All those types of issues are those things that will be decided by other folks. But I'm gathering the mana'o to do that. The family has been very excited about the idea of recognizing the service to the nation. I met with Nātiaʻia Wainee, and they shared the same type of mana'o. We've got it all transcribed. It's going to be all part of the public report. The Kalei Maile and Li'i Society passed a resolution supporting that idea. Yeah. Yes?
Go ahead and finish that thought, but I do have a question.
Sure. About a minute and a half, all done. And so, from those different stakeholders, we take in the stuff, transcribe it, and turn it in the report. Again, it's not a done process, so anybody is welcome to continue to add to the knowledge. We have an email that I've forgotten off the top of my head yet, but I'll give you my email. And the second hopeful part of that project is to do the physical work. Now, there's still stuff to do, research to do before that. What's the proper, I don't know anything about the mechanics of it. Who does that? How much is that going to cost? How do we do this? What's the proper way to do this? So all those things are addressed in the second part. Hopeful second part of the project. But so far, we've gathered the narrative, we've gathered the documents, and we've gathered the mana'o about sharing his story in a way that all the stakeholders come together on. Yes?
Do you know, actually, Tom, you probably know this as well, is the slab that is on top of the Richards grave as it exists the original slab that was prepared at the time of his burial, or was that subsequent to Pioneer Mills redo?
We don't have any physical evidence to tell us. Mike, go ahead. My guess is that it was there prior to the Pioneer Mill work because the Pioneer guys didn't mention anything about it. They were pretty clear in their letters what they did. They say we put cement here and they didn't say anything about marble slab. So my guess is that was there prior to the Pioneer Mill in 1930, but I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Resigns from the ABCFM, but he still claim on the headstone.
So he said that he resigned from the ABCFM, but they still claim him. Yes, because I don't think there's, I'm not saying my opinion about that, but I think that's pretty common that if you serve as a pastor of some place or so forth, that you're always known as Reverend so-and-so of that church, right? I might be wrong. But that's part of that sharing. So the ABCFM, not the ABCFM, the Hawaiian Mission Children's Society always also weighed in on this. So they share their knowledge part of that too. Question? Yes.
When they went to France in 1880, I mean, I'm sure
letter that I showed you to President Tyler, those were also made in France. So there are sealed letters signed by Hawaiian saying, Timoteo Ha'aleo and Reverend William Richards are hereby commissioned by me as representatives to your court. So that they didn't say that, right? So they show up and they got the signature and they got the seal and they show it to the court, hey, and then they did it. An interesting side note to that, I always think of side notes, sorry. But an interesting side note to that, these stories of Hawaiian history are amazing. So, in 1860, this talks about Hawaiian people. This is of the work that Richard did. In 1860, the first Japanese delegation of diplomats to the United States happened. Japan was just opening up and so forth. And they were literally, we have photographs, they were literally like dressed as samurai. Still ceremonial swords and everything. And they were going to Washington, D.C. to talk to the President of the United States. There's a storm, and the ship gets torn apart, not torn apart, but broken. And so they have to port in Hawaii. So the king is scrambling, oh, how do we treat these folks? And how do we do this? And formal document and so forth. And so we did a show on this for it because the descendants of that group came to Hawaii. So they asked us to prepare something. We did. And they came in and I gathered all the documents, and it was fascinating because the Japanese delegation arrives here, they are given certain gifts, they give gifts back, and they're issued Hawaiian Kingdom passports. I thought, oh, what would that be? And then I figured it out. It's because we didn't have Japanese passports because Japan wasn't a recognized sovereign nation.
Huh.
So the Hawaiian Kingdom afforded them a diplomatic process that they didn't even have themselves. Japan was recognized as a formal sovereign nation in 1893 by the League of London. It was the first recognition of Japan as a sovereign independent nation. Right? Hawaii had that 50 years prior. So the Kingdom of Hawaii was higher diplomatically than Japan. So they give them passports to help them on their journey to the United States when they arrive in the United States. And the second interesting part about it is passports are written both in English and Spanish. Why Spanish? Why Spanish? I know them. Why Spanish?
Probably a lingua franca today.
Well, they're going from Hawaii. They work in South America on the way to the U.S., so they have Spanish passports.
Right.
So the first country to recognize Japan
Was Hawaii. Was Hawaii. Now, and there's always a catch, right? There's always a catch. She wrote that letter and that formal recognition 2 days before the overthrow. So it arrived in Japan post-overthrow. I'm not an international lawyer, so we're supposed to argue, does it still have power? I don't know. But the Queen was the first one to recognize Japan. So, final point, and then we'll take questions. Yes?
Oh, I was just going back to the idea that their mission was a secret mission. And from whom would they want to keep that secret? They weren't going to keep it secret from, obviously, France and Britain.
Right. I don't know specific countries, but I know that Kauikila and the others talked about the fact that there were people who had aims on Hawaii. So there were countries that were looking at taking Hawaii. So
Maybe Russia?
I don't know what the power of the Russian Navy at the time may be. But it was generally an idea of, let's, not necessarily we got to keep this top secret, but if the world knows, then what if somebody doesn't want us to become independent? Then they can get a head start in stopping that.
Right.
It was like, let's show up and try to make this happen. And it worked. I mean, the chances of that working, think of how we go in the 1830s going, I'm going to get recognition from France and England, and that's going to save our country. But it worked. It worked because of men like Richard. So I model him very much. I hope to continue this project. And I hope it does become one of those multiple levels that bridges gaps, right? It tells people, look, a missionary who was one of the most intense Waiola